Welcome back again to Sense Talking. If you seek, you will find.
Mm.
Today, we are taking a truly deep dive into a set of sources that present a pretty stunning premise.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that the map of global power we all think we know, well, with national governments, elections, all that, is basically a smokescreen.
Right. The research we've analyzed, it claims the world is fundamentally governed not by nations, but by three small, ancient, and totally independent corporate city-states.
And this is where the standard story of geopolitics just gets flipped on its head.
Completely. The sources argue that major global events are often orchestrated or engineered, and that the real line of authority, it doesn't lead to places like the White House or Downing Street.
No, it leads to three very specific places.
Three sovereign entities, the City of London, Washington, D.C., specifically the 10 square miles of the District of Columbia and Vatican City.
So let's just lay out who these three alleged rulers are, because their status is really the key to the whole thing.
It is.
According to this material, they operate completely outside any national authority. They have their own constitutions, separate police forces, their own unique laws.
And maybe the most important part, they pay absolutely no taxes to the host countries they sit inside of.
The scale of their supposed influence it's kind of staggering.
It is. The sources assert that these three corporate city-states, together, they control the vast majority of global systems.
Like what, specifically?
Well, they dictate economic policy, they start military actions, they shape media narratives, and they manage the flow of global money.
And the number they put on it is huge.
The documents suggest they control a staggering 80% of the world's entire wealth.
80%.
Okay.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack the history, the symbolism, and the alleged mechanisms of control used by these three entities. We're just going to follow the trail of breadcrumbs the sources have laid out.
And a good place to start is with a physical connection, something that links all three right at their cores.
Yeah, the symbolism.
What stands out right away is this consistent use of, well, profound occult symbolism across all three sites, specifically these giant phallic-shaped stone obelisks.
Right at their centers of power. The sources refer to this as representing the male principle, often paired with a circle for the female.
Exactly. So if you start in London, you have Cleopatra's Needle. It was brought from Egypt, erected on the Thames in 1878.
And the placement, the research notes, is really significant. It's right near the old docks of the Knights Templar, and the obelisk itself is surrounded by these Egyptian sphinxes.
It's a deliberate infusion of ancient, non-secular symbolism right into the heart of the global financial system.
Okay, so that's London. Then you see the same pattern in Washington, D.C.
With the Washington Monument,
Yeah.
yeah. The sources point out it was dedicated in 1848, and its financing and construction were heavily driven by Freemasons.
They actually contributed Masonic memorial stones, didn't they?
22 of them. And the material specifically highlights groups like the Knights Templar Masonic Order, suggesting this structure confirms this ancient, non-secular power base behind the American Capitol.
And then the third one, the Vatican.
The Vatican obelisk, right in the middle of St. Peter's Square, also from Egypt, moved there in 1586. And the sources are very specific about this.
The obelisk is in the center of a huge circle.
Completing that same pairing. The male and female principles right at the heart of all three of these alleged administrative centers. It's a consistent visual signature.
So let's dig into the first city, the City of London Corporation, or COL.
And that distinction is critical. We are not talking about the big metropolitan London that you see on a map.
Well, this is different.
The COL is a 1 square mile entity. The sources claim it was set up when the Romans arrived 2,000 years ago, and its sovereign status was locked in by William the Conqueror in 1694.
And here's where it moves from just history to like an actual mechanism of power. This corporation operates totally independently of the UK government.
It's got its own city hall, its own police force, its own laws.
They even have two separate mayors. There's the one who runs the modern city, and then there's the Lord Mayor who rules the corporation.
And he's the one you see in parades in that golden carriage, right?
Exactly, signifying this unique non-civil authority.
And what's fascinating is how protected this tiny square mile is. The sources detail the role of the remembrancer.
Remembrancer, right.
He's a representative of the COIL who has a permanent seat in the UK Parliament. His only job is to make sure that no law passed by the British Parliament interferes with the financial interests of the corporation.
Oh, yeah. What are those interests?
Well, the research is clear on this. The COIL is home to the Rothschild-controlled Bank of England, the London Stock Exchange, Lloyd's of London.
And critically, this global financial cartel they refer to as the Crown.
And they go to great lengths to define the Crown. It's not the British royalty.
No, it's a separate corporate legal structure, a perpetual trust that owns the assets and controls the whole system.
This is the core aha moment in the financial narrative. The Crown, according to these sources, is the ultimate global landlord.
And it allegedly controls the IMF.
The World Bank, the European Central Bank, and crucially for this whole story, the U.S. Federal Reserve System. This is how the coal stays the hub of global financial power.
Okay, so let's cross the Atlantic to Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia.
Just like the City of London, D.C. is presented as not really being part of the United States. It's a 10-square-mile territory that operates under a specific kind of ancient Roman law called
Lex Fori.
Lex Fori, thank you. And the sources describe it as a specific commercial code that basically replaces constitutional common law.
So it means D.C. operates purely for corporate governance, and individual rights under the Constitution are, what, secondary?
Subordinate to the needs of the corporation. That's the argument.
And the sources point to one specific moment, the Act of 1871.
Passed by Congress, yes. This act allegedly created a separate private corporation called the United States just for the District of Columbia.
So when the President and Congress are in D.C., they're claimed to be working for this corporation, not the American Republic.
And again, you have to look at the symbolism. The D.C. flag has 3 red stars.
Which the material explicitly says represents the triad, D.C., Vatican City, and the City of London.
Yeah. And if you connect D.C.'s corporate status back to this ongoing financial relationship with London, it leads you right into the next section.
Where the sources start to question the whole idea of American independence.
Right, through the lens of these historical treaties.
The narrative basically asks, if the U.S. really won the Revolutionary War in 1781, why did they need the 1783 Treaty of Paris to declare independence?
And the sources highlight language in that treaty, which allegedly identifies the King of England as the Prince of the United States.
Suggesting a continued allegiance, like a landlord-tenant relationship was set up.
And they really attack the validity of that treaty by focusing on the titles of the U.S. signatories.
Like Benjamin Franklin and John Jay.
Exactly. They are recorded as using the title Esquire. And the material argues that back then, Esquire was a specific title of nobility.
Meaning allegiance to the crown.
Which would legally compromise their ability to negotiate a truly independent separation.
And it didn't stop there. 13 years after independence, the U.S. signed another treaty with England, the Jay Treaty, in 1794.
And why did that agreement continue to dictate terms and debts to a supposedly sovereign America? The sources see this as very suspicious.
Which brings us to a huge historical event that these sources interpret purely through this financial lens.
The War of 1812.
Which happened right after the charter for the First National Bank was canceled in 1811.
The analysis is very direct here. The war was just about enforcing financial compliance.
So British forces come in, and they don't just burn down buildings like the White House and Congress. They specifically went after the records.
They purposefully destroyed the original ratification records of the Constitution.
The argument is that this wasn't random vandalism. It was a deliberate act to destroy the legal basis of the Republic's common law and keep the corporate structure on top.
And the proof, according to this analysis, is what happened after. The war ends with the Treaty of Ghent in 1815.
And the bank charter was reestablished in 1816.
Suggesting the whole war was manufactured just to keep those financial ties to the City of London intact.
And if that wasn't enough, the sources point to 1913 as the final nail in the coffin.
The Federal Reserve Act.
Yeah. It handed over total control of America's currency, its gold reserves, to private banksters, mostly the Rothschild network, allegedly based in London.
Which confirms the conclusion they draw, that the U.S. president ultimately works for a corporation in D.C., which is controlled by financial interests in the Call L, not the American people.
So that's the financial argument.
Yeah.
But what about controlling what people think? Global ideology.
Right. And for that, we have to pivot to the third corporate state. Vatican City.
Which is described as the last living piece of the Roman Empire, totally independent of Italy.
And its power is far from just spiritual. The sources emphasize its just staggering wealth.
Accumulated over centuries by things like taxing indulgences. The material basically calls it selling tickets to heaven.
And that wealth gets turned into massive global investments. The argument is that the Vatican holds investments in Rothschild-controlled banks, in oil, in weapons corporations.
They reportedly own huge amounts of American Express stock, more liquid assets than many small countries.
Which the sources highlight as a bit of a contradiction to their charitable mission.
But the control isn't just financial, it's ideological. The sources point to the Fabian Society, founded in 1887, as the core engineering group for global political philosophies.
And they describe the Fabians not as a single movement, but as a deliberate mix of opposing systems. Fascism, Nazism, Marxism, communism.
Why? What's the point of mixing them?
The analysis suggests that because these contradictory ideologies all have overlapping elements, they must have been engineered by the same hand to control people through manufactured conflict, divide and conquer.
The claims tied to the Fabian Society they're just sweeping.
Oh, they're huge. The material credits them with creating communist China, the fascist movements in Italy and Germany, and the global spread of socialism.
And they say the Fabians controlled pretty much every major global institution.
The IMF, World Bank, CIA, UN, EU, Bilderberg groups, the Federal Reserve, you name it.
And they back this up with a quote, right?
Yeah, a really specific quote from an Australian senator, Chris Schacht. In 2001, he allegedly told a Senate committee, and I'm quoting here, "You probably were not aware that us Fabians have taken over the CIA, KGB, M15, ASIO, IMF, the World Bank, and many other organizations."
Which is presented as kind of a smoking gun for this ideological takeover.
And if they control the organizations, the material argues, they control the global agendas.
Let's start with climate change and global warming.
The sources contend that the environmental catastrophe narrative is deliberately used to create public consensus for a global government.
Which is the first step needed to implement something called UN Agenda 21 and now Agenda 2030.
Right. And the material scrutinizes Agenda 21, arguing that while it sounds nice, sustainable development, its real goal is to abolish private property rights.
To force people into these highly monitored cities.
And make you get permission for everything you do. It's about dismantling individual autonomy in favor of a controlling technocracy.
And this engineered conflict, it goes beyond just ideology.
The sources claim that economic crises, oil crises, things like the Arab Springs, major wars, they are all manufactured.
There's a recurring theme in the research.
That all wars are simply bankers' wars, designed to enforce debt and maintain this tripartite corporate structure.
And it even extends to food. The sources highlight the danger of putting control of the global food supply into the hands of entities like Monsanto, or through the UN's Codex Alimentarius.
Which they argue is a regulatory framework designed to centralize and restrict food safety and distribution, another leverage point for population control.
Okay, so as we move toward the conclusion, the sources introduce one last and, frankly, unbelievable detail.
This is the real wild card.
A physical link between the alleged spiritual heart and the ancient banking capital.
The sources claim that a 1,500-mile underground tunnel was discovered,
stretching all the way from Vatican City in Rome to Jerusalem.
And the most sensational claim is what was supposedly inside. A treasure trove of gold and artifacts so huge
that the material claims it took an armada of 650 airplanes to transport it all out.
It's presented as the ultimate physical connector between ancient Roman religious authority, the site of the original financial capital, and the global financial system today.
So to bring this all back to the overarching claim that ties this entire deep dive together.
Nothing, according to these sources, happens randomly.
Every major global event is orchestrated by a handful of people operating out of these three independent corporate city-states.
Using finance, law, and ideology as their main tools.
And the ultimate goal.
The material is clear. To establish a totalitarian global rule. A world where the elite are the rulers and the rest are the ruled, maybe after a significant depopulation event.
And the City of London Corporation, as the financial hub, would effectively become the headquarters of the One World Earth Corporation.
It really forces you to rethink some fundamental things we just take for granted.
It does. If concepts like national sovereignty and constitutional law are built on, questionable treaties and corporate structures, like a constitution whose ratification records were allegedly burned in a war over a bank charter, what other established truths do we have to start questioning about how we're governed? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Don't forget to subscribe and always seek to unlearn to relearn.